I'm just now realizing that the the usual way we humans do in society to gain trust is much slower than that of losing trust. I was thinking about airplane security, flight security, where we are asked at each flight to, well, in a subtle way, we are asked to prove that we are not a threat to the security of the airplane, that we do not have a bomb to explode the airplane, that we're not going to try to hijack the airplane, we're not going to try to violate the integrity of the flight. And so we have all these metal detectors and magnetic resonance machines or something, and checks and identity checks and passport numbers and ensuring that the person that's going there is the person that they say, and ensuring that their behavior is not unusual, and ensuring that our luggage doesn't have potentially dangerous items, intentionally or unintentionally. And all of these are processes that occur because the entity of flights, of commercial flights, does not trust the default person. They do not trust the default person. They verify each time, which makes sense. And I'm realizing I can board airplanes quite easily, flights, because I likely am not in any of the lists where they say, hey, this guy has criminal history or arrest history, or he acts in suspicious ways, or he knows about explosives, or no violent organization association. Like, they have a lot of checks on people, and I'm able to board them fairly problem-free because I'm likely not in these lists. And I'm realizing, what if I just, one time I'm on an airplane and I test the system somehow to see how secure the system is. Like, I'm wondering, what if I'm in an airplane and I connect to the flight internet and I just send messages about there, like, oh, someone's messaging me with something like, is the bomb ready? And now I would pretend to have a conversation about a bomb and then see what happens. And I don't want to do it, for sure. But what I imagine would happen is, what I imagine would happen if they actually intercepted the message, which I don't know if they do, but if they did, then I would likely get put in these lists. And perhaps after or at the same time that I get forcefully arrested or detained. And the point is, I would be on this list, and then there could be a lot probably a lot harder to get accepted into flights, to try to for them to verify that my intent is not a bomb. So they already have a fairly low bar for trust in the default person. But then the trust for me would get so much would become lower. They would not trust me that I stick to usual methods, and they might fear that I have violent intentions. And what I was thinking is, it feels like it would be almost impossible to remove that mistrust, to assuage their fears and say, hey, no, that's not my intention. My feeling is that my identity would never, my person's identity would never be taking off these lists. Because this society has the habit of recording things, and it's gotten better at it. It has gotten better at it for a long time. So these things would be recorded, and there's really no extra effort required in just keeping my name there. But I'm realizing there's a protocol certainly for lowering the trust in someone, but I don't think there's a protocol for raising the trust. And it's like, and I realize it seems to be the same case for people. People usually have some inherent trust. Go running. Whoopsie. So there's some inherent trust that we have in people. For some it's lower, for some it's higher. The trust for the default person. And then as things happen, we either gain or lose trust. And the gainship of trust is, like I mentioned, slower. It builds upon things every day. Because in this context, this kind of trust, it's more, it's equivalent to lack of fear. It's the lack of fear that that someone else can be prejudicial, that is, harmful. That someone's actions or behavior or presence can be harmful to us. And the issue is the absence of harmful events up until now does not guarantee the absence of harmful events in the future. It can fairly correlate with it, and we use it as evidence to gain our trust. It feels more significant to have had no harmful interactions with the person for 6 months than it does to have had no harmful interactions with a person for a week, or no harmful interactions with the person for an hour. They're all different. What we're gaining, this gain of trust, it seems like it's just it's the lowering of fear. It's the weakening of the fear. And I wonder if it ever goes completely away. I believe it feels at some points that it truly feels like, oh, there's no fear at all. And, that's when we can relax. When there is no fear of the other, we relax. At least relax about them. And we ourselves. But then I realized one harmful interaction. Imagine they're having 0 harmful interactions with a person, and then one harmful interaction occurs. Boom. It sets up a warning. It's just like this little message of, oh, maybe do you have the bomb ready? And it's and it would immediately just raise the fear, at least a little bit. Okay, what's going on? Alert. Are we safe? Are we safe? Is this okay? Is this intentful? Can this harm more? And I'd say that the first thing we go and look for is, what is their intent? Because unintentional harm still doesn't seem good. It still doesn't feel good. Still doesn't. Still raises the fear a little bit. Strengthens the fear. But certainly not as much, because if it is unintentional, then we know that it's not come from them. It's not sourced in them, the harm. It's sourced in context. In the context that they just happen to be a part of. So we see this fear and we feel, okay, I don't like that. Like maybe they let out spoon dropping and fell on my foot and ow. My instinct tells me, oh, I need to be a little careful around with the spoon, with this person. And then if I realize, okay, this wasn't at all their intention, then I can move on. But the fear will still move a little bit. It's in waves. It's like, and then it takes time to lower down, to weaken, by gathering more data about absence of harm. But yeah, gauging another's intentions. Gauging another's intentions is an essential part of the process. After we initially determine, okay, boom, fear raised, I realized the first thing to do is awareness, and we become aware. We sharpen our awareness and try to find, okay, what is the intent? Is the intent harmful? Even at an unconscious level. And I think if intent is not harmful, we'll probably let the fear go fairly slowly. But it goes. It goes away. Maybe for some people even immediately. But then if there is an intent, if we probe into it and ask or determine that there was an intent, not of harm, but not necessarily of harm. It doesn't need to be an intent of, I want to harm you, but an intent of like, did the action that they did harm me? Did they want to do that action? And then, boop, in any case, the fear will get raised. But if they did want to take that action, then then I feel the fear can strengthen a little more, because it can feel, okay, this person is unaware that this action he or she is taking consciously is harming me. Like, they don't know. And then, okay, that raises the fear a little bit more, and then they can. But then, what can occur to soothe that, to what is it? Yeah, minimize, soothe, blah, blah, blah. To help with that is to communicate. To say, hey, what you just did harmed me. I do not like to be harmed. Please don't harm me by doing that. Would go the request. And then, of course, communication can happen, but the fear is raised a little bit because they realize, okay, there's a little bit of unawareness. And if they're not aware that what they do harms me, but they still want to do it, it feels it would feel like maybe the context that this person assumes is conflicts with the context that I assume. For example, right now my example is that I live in a community with different people, and maybe, for example, there's a person who, after cooking and eating, they just leave all the dirty dishes in the sink. And it's not their intent to harm anyone, but then maybe one person sees that and maybe they take offense to that. So in a way, they are harmed, even in that subtle manner. So the next step to take would be communication. To say, hey, I don't like it when the dishes are left unclean and messy in the sink or wherever they were left. Please clean up after yourself. Nice. And then communication happens, and maybe it's understood, maybe not. But then the idea is to see, then one would naturally seek to see if it repeats, if it happens again. If it happens repeatedly, then fear will strengthen, especially after communication. If there's no communication between them, then one's fear can still raise, although the thing to do there would be to have communication and report, hey, your action that you do with intention harms me. Please change your behavior. And then of course, they can also not say, I don't want to do that, and then there would need to be some kind of conflict resolution. But if the communication is accepted and taken, and then let's see, what does the person look for? When the person looks for, when after having communicated something, is the person we would likely be alert to whether it occurs again, because we know now that, okay, that's a possible harm there. I would like that to not happen again. Let's see if it happens. And usually there's even a little bit of prepared blame at that stage. Like thinking, this person, like, I didn't like what they did. Let's see if he does it again, even after I told him not to. And then it happens again, and then boom. Then probably the fear would raise again. And it doesn't have to be the second time, but after a repeated number of times, usually anger comes up. Anger, because one knows that one has requested to not be harmed, and it continues. So that would likely raise the fear once more, or lower the trust, as one prefers to call it, even further. And regaining that trust it just takes time. It's just like a wave that has been rattled a bit too much, and it's going up and down, and then suddenly, okay, let's let it. It needs absence of harm, absence of fear, absence of triggers to let it smooth down. One needs to allow it as well. If one does not allow it, if one holds on to that fear, then it doesn't need to really slow down. It can just stay stuck. And I feel that's what would happen, that could happen when in the third case there is harm done, and it's intentional. Like when there is an action taken by another with the intent of harming, that strengthens fear quite a lot. Because, well, we people don't usually like to be harmed. We seek homeostasis, relaxation, peace, calm, well-being. Yes, we also seek excitement and adventure and change, novelty at times. I would say, however, that we don't. It would be very rare for anyone to seek harm. And I would say no, that does not happen. By definition, harm is something that injures our being. And all beings reject, they feel repulsion towards what harms them. Is that true? Those shapes are really cool. The branches, the twigs. Duk, duk. Notice the zigzag pattern. Zigzag, 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 with a little junction at each. At each turn, a little junction and a little budding bud. Maybe the beginning of a flower. End of February, at this time in Switzerland. The intent of harm. So when there is harm, when we notice that there is an action taken by another that intends to harm us, be it a punch in the face, a stab in the body, stealing someone's money, or actually something that I think happens more commonly, the projection of blame onto other people. There is hurt. There's usually an injury, like because well, if they were successful, then they injure whatever part of us is being injured, whether it be the flesh, blood, bones, muscles, fascia body, or our emotions, perhaps our beliefs and our thoughts. When that happens, the level of fear rises. And after that step, I feel it can quite take longer time for the fear to weaken again. Because at those times, it is possible that the fear sticks, that we choose not to let it go, and perhaps quite sensibly. I think that's what some of these sayings refer to when they say, "Oh, it takes years to build trust, but one moment to break it, to kill it." Maybe. I feel that's what it's referring to. It's just when there's the intent of harming, we know that communication is likely not going to work because we would tell them, "Hey, you intended to harm me and you harmed me. Please don't do that again." If that's the intent, well, it's like I would be trying to change the other person's intent, and it's possible. It's just It's a little bit like asking them to not be who they are. It's like, oh, if you had an intent of harming me, then why I don't want you to harm me. I'm gonna go away from you because it's not just in your unconscious nature. It's in your conscious nature trying to harm. And I feel that happens quite often between people. The throwing of blame, the proving they're wrong, the throwing around of blame from one person to another like it's a hot coal in our hands or in our solar plexuses. Uncomfortable sensation. And my impression is that flights, with their security and trust and verification systems, they assume the third. They assume the last of these options whenever there's any harm done or harm even suggested. If I even mention the word bomb, even unintentionally or in completely another context, it could easily get taken out of context and one can just get detained and interrogated. And my feeling is that the assumption is this person could have the intent of harming. So recorded that this person could have the intent of harming. Verify, super verify this person. It probably also has a lowering time for them in their system. Though I'm quite I would imagine that it does not go away easily, if ever. Intent. Intent, is it tied to a person? Sometimes it's tied to a group, to a cause, to a tribe, to a something. It's quite helpful to recognize the dynamics that happen of harm, of trust, of fear between ourselves and other people. It allows clarity of what we are doing, of what we want. Of another person's dynamic as well. Because it's important to know that they also have emotions, and we can also harm other people unintentionally or intentionally without knowing that we're doing it. Such as throwing blame around, trying to prove superiority, whether moral or mental or logical or anything. Blah, 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 blah.